Hello and welcome to 21st Century Vitalism. This is a podcast exploring how we can best maintain a sense of energy, inspiration, and wakefulness while dealing with the unique stressors of the modern age. My name is Brett, and I'll be your host on this journey as we have a multidisciplinary conversation with a wide range of individuals who each hold an important piece to this puzzle. This typically includes esteemed spiritual teachers, somatic therapists, artists, environmentalists, activists, just about anyone else who I feel is truly manifesting their unique brilliance. This episode is quite an example of that, as we are joined by the incredibly talented, visionary floral sculptor Anthony Ward. He's most known for his elaborate onstage performances where he combines his background of dance with the art of floral arrangement. He's graced the stage with monumental acts such as Bobby McFerrin, Michael Franti, STS9, Tipper, and a whole slew of other giants in the music industry. Not only that, he's also had the opportunity to create work for countless others, including the Dalai Lama, Ram Dass, Eckhart Tolle, and Maya Angelou. In this conversation, we talk about his life with the flowers, the spiritual aspect of flower arranging, and the countless lessons he's learned from his dedication to this path. So this is one of those conversations that highlights a perennial message that this show is founded upon. That being that regardless of whatever it is that inspires you, if you follow it fully and allow it to guide your life, your work will contribute to the betterment of our world. All it takes is an authentic quality of heart and an allowance to go deeper into whatever it is that's tugging on your spirit. So with that, I would love to introduce Anthony Ward. Before we get to that though, I highly recommend checking out some of his videos on YouTube just to get a sense of the style of work that he's doing. It's one thing to hear his words and these stories, and it's another to genuinely take it into your senses. So the links for that will be down below. If you want to explore the path of flowers more fully, I'd recommend his book, Being with Flowers, Floral Art as Spiritual Practice. It can be scooped up wherever you order your books. Amazon's probably the easiest. And if you want to support this show, head on over to patreon.com/21st Century Vitalism and consider becoming a patron. It really does help me keep the lights on. Money's tight. I totally get that. We're all living in 2024. You're always welcome to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, or like us on Facebook. Any and all interaction helps grow the show and helps me bring in more amazing guests such as Anthony. So without further ado, open your heart for the one and only Anthony Ward. Okay, so we are now live, Anthony. As always, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for giving me some of your time. This has been an interview that I've wanted for quite a bit now, so it's really cool to sit down with you and be able to explore your work. How are you doing today?
I'm well today. I woke up very early and started the day in my garden, preparing for a photo shoot. I'm working with a master photographer for my new book project, and it has a lot to do with gardening and being in the
Mm,
garden. And so for the
yeah,
last 4 years, we've been photographing my garden beds and the way they've transformed, and so that's how I started my day.
that sounds amazing.
Mhm.
So just to let you know how you've kind of came into my orbit, I was first connected with you through the Rootwire Festival. I
Wow.
don't know if it was 2012 or 2013 that I saw
hmm
you, but
hmm
I remember seeing you do your floral dances on stage and
hmm
the floral arrangements that you did for that particular event. And I found it to be really striking. So
Mm,
you've been in my orbit pretty much since then. I've seen your stuff on and off. And, when I
mhm,
started this podcast, you came up pretty early in my brainstorming as somebody I thought would be really fascinating to interview on your
mhm,
work. And I thought a really good spot to start would to just kind of get an introduction. Some people may have never heard of you or really know what you're about
mhm.
outside of the introduction I'll naturally give them. But yeah, how did you get into this line of work and how do you describe your work with the flowers?
Well, I've been working with flowers since I was a child. I had my first garden when I was 13, and I was encouraged to do that from both of my grandmothers, who were really avid gardeners. Um, And I really started doing professional work um, because a friend told me, I did a wedding for her sister, and she said, people get paid for this. You could be doing this for a living. And it was a hobby, but it was something that I felt very deeply connected with and very much um, connected with my heart and not sort of as a business. I never thought of it as a business. But once I started doing it as a business, I realized I could do it all the time. And that would be how I would sustain my life. And so I started, the first thing I did was a wedding. And
Mm,
the work that you're talking about, the floral work on stage with flowers and dancing, I started because I was asked to perform on stage with Bobby McFerrin um, as part of
wow.
the San Francisco Jazz Festival. So he did this amazing event where he had different musicians and artists come up on stage and they would just automatically start creating something together.
Wow. All
And
improv?
all improv. And he had David
Yeah.
Grisman and the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, and he had a ballerina,
Mm,
some jugglers, and Ornette Coleman, the
yeah.
legendary drummer. And in the audience was Michael Franti, who's been a friend of mine for many years. And I was like, Michael, I'm doing this thing with Bobby McFerrin. I don't know what I'm going to do, but please come. So he was there. Michael was there. And when
Yeah.
we were done, he said, Anthony, I was in tears the whole time you guys were on stage. You have to do that with Spearhead. You have to.
Mm,
And I said, of course. So it became a really regular thing with Spearhead. I've done performances with them all over the world. We did two of Barack Obama's inaugural balls. We
wow.
were in
I love
Paris
that.
together once, and in one of the performances, Zach Velmer, who's that amazing drummer from STS9, who's an
Mm-hmm.
old longtime friend too, he was there, and he said, "Dude, you've got to do this with STS9." So I
Yeah.
I performed with STS9, and that became a really regular kind of thing with us too. And one of their after parties, I was asked to perform with Tipper, the
Mm,
amazing
yeah.
mu- uh,
Yeah.
electronic music. He does music that I call visionary electronic music. That's what I call
Yeah. Yeah.
that type of
I think
music.
he's probably my favorite artist.
Yeah. And so they said, Tipper's going to be on stage. Would you like to perform with him? And I said, yes, please. And what was cool about that is that I was able, with Michael, I would do one song. With STS9, I would do one song. But with Tipper, I was able to do his whole set. So I created two different pieces one on either side of him. And yeah, he's such a lovely guy too. We um we did that quite a few times. And so then other people in the electronic music world asked me to do this as well. I've done this work with musicians of all types of music. There's a woman, Katya Graneva, who has the record of the most classical piano concerts at Carnegie Hall. I've performed
Wow.
with her. I performed with Carlos Nakai, the Native American flutist, and and it, if the music makers and I feel that it works, then it works. It, it just something that meshes, and it
Yeah.
becomes this beautiful synergy.
Curious. I mean, that's a
Mhm.
very extensive resume that you have. These are some really megalithic creators in their respective fields. What is that like for you to, especially like from your very first time being on stage, co-creating with people? How do you describe your headspace and what you need to do to really get into that place and to
Mhm.
start creating? And do you have your methodology behind it? Some people who are
Mhm.
listening to this might not even heard or seen what you do. So could you also describe a little bit about kind of what that process is?
Well, I have an extensive background in dance. I started in ballet, when I was like 15, and I danced. You know, I got to a place where I was just going to be in one of the big dance companies in New York, but I decided not to move to New York. And at the same time, I started getting into spirituality. The first time that I really stepped into looking into my spiritual life was um, through Thich Nhat Hanh. I read one of his books called "Peace Is Every Step," and
Mm-hmm.
I just what I realized. I was living in Santa Cruz at one point, and I had my own shop, and I was asked to do a space for Ram Dass, to
Mm.
create an altar for him to speak from. And from the moment that I heard him speaking, I realized that what I wanted to do with my work is, and what my true calling is, floral art as a spiritual practice, and
Yeah.
bringing the dance and my spiritual practice all together on stage. It becomes somewhat of a public prayer, really.
Yeah.
What I do
Yeah.
is just center myself. I get quiet. I um, ask my ancestors and all of the people who've ever been kind to me to come with me on this adventure. Maya Angelou taught me to do that when I'm
Mm.
going to take a stage or teach a class. Bring all of those people with me. And what I do is I employ my extensive background in dance and the joy of working with flowers and the music as well. I mean, sometimes I know the music, uh, some of the set in advance, but it's a lot of improv, and it's a lot of just moving out of the way and letting the flowers move through me.
Mm.
And when that happens, it's really magic. It's because sometimes I get off stage and I'm like, what just happened? I don't even really know. And it's just a lot of a lot of dance teachers. So some of my best dance teachers would say you practice and practice and practice so that you can forget all of that and just dance. Get
Mm.
out of your head, and it becomes just the movement becomes a sacred expression. And I've been so honored to do this so many times. And so really it's really just a deep part of my spiritual practice, to be able to share this on stage. Um, but I mirror that by many, many, many hours in silence, alone in my garden with just the birds and God's silence, just that's how I prepare for the work that I do on the outside world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, as you were kind of developing this as a career, like that ability to kind of leap off into the known, into the unknown of a practice that is not very popular,
Mhm.
I think, how was that for you when you were a little bit younger and like dealing with the uncertainty of like, is this going to be able to support me? Like,
Uh-huh.
how did you learn how to trust that this path of floral arrangement was going to be okay?
From my mentor, when I was
Mm.
first starting with flowers, I had the honor of working with a true master florist in Los Angeles. His name was Wilbur G. Davis, and he had a shop called My Son the Florist. And he had a clientele which included people like Elizabeth Taylor, who would actually call him to get flowers from him.
Mm.
And at that time, he was like the man for flowers. And what he said to me is like, you found the thing that you were meant to do. The money will come.
Yeah.
You just have to trust the money will come. And he was right. He was right. He was right. It's that thing where they say, where I'm sure you've heard, the universe conspires with you once you find your calling.
Hmm.
That has happened for me time and again. Um, and
Yeah.
people recognize when they see you putting your heart and soul into something. Really, the times that I've connected with really outstanding people like the Dalai Lama, I've done 10 altars for him over the years. Um, they they see what I'm doing. A lot of people, when people see what I'm doing, they want to help me. Like Maya Angelou was that way for me. Alice Walker has been that way for me. Jane Goodall has been that way for me. They not just because they're noted people, but when people see that you're passionate about something, that you're really at a soul level contributing what you do, people want to help.
It's amazing because, what you're working with, flowers, as an art form, there's something really ephemeral about them and the fact
Yes,
that they don't last very long. So
exactly.
the fact that you were able to make your way through life, connect with these amazing beings through an art form that uses this very temporary medium,
Hmm.
there's just something about that I feel like really engenders like a sense of trust in reality, because you don't have like a stockpile of things that you're working from. It's just you're relying on the moment and what's being presented. And, even as you're working with a flower, if you spend a day or two, it's changing,
Hmm.
so there's something about that I think in working with them, it really forces you to be so present and so understanding of the nature of impermanence. And I
Mm.
really liked from your book, just you really elaborate on the relationship that we have with flowers and how we use them to celebrate just pretty much everything
Hmm.
in our human lives,
Hmm.
beginnings, anniversaries, endings.
Hmm.
And there's just something about that moment, like you can't take that flower with you into the future, and yet it can bring so much meaning to
Hmm.
an experience.
Hmm.
They really are everywhere.
Yes,
I just think that could be really powerful for people to contemplate.
truly. And yes, the impermanence is part of their beauty, definitely. And Thich Nhat Hanh often would work with flowers as an example through his teachings. And he would say, if you look deeply at a tree in the winter when it's all bare, if you look deeply, you can see the blossoms just coming.
Wow.
And the impermanence is part of the beauty for me. Sometimes when I do an
Yeah.
arrangement for someone, people will say, "How long is this going to last?" They want to know how long is this going to last. And I often say, um, what's important is for you to enjoy the process of the change and not to
Wow.
be connected with any how long it's going to look this way. It's like letting yourself open to the change that's going to happen and enjoying it at this moment because it is going to change so rapidly,
Yeah.
and that is part of the beauty. Mhm.
So when you're taking on these ideas of arrangements, do you have like a lineage that you plug into, or how did you like learn the skill? Is it just from your teacher relationship, from your mentor? Or...
Well, I one of the things that I did just instinctively without really knowing what I was doing, there is a style of floral arrangement from Japan called ikebana, and
Mm-hmm.
it was actually um, handed down through the Buddhist tradition. There's one teaching that the Buddha did with a lot of his students one day, and he just held up a sunflower. He didn't say anything. He just held it up, and everyone was like, "What the heck is he doing?" Except this one monk called Mahakasyapa, and he smiled at the Buddha, and the Buddha said, Mahakasyapa, he knows what's up, just because he smiled. And
Yeah.
so that through that, there was that's when people in Japan started bringing in flowers to their homes, and there's a particular style that Ikebana follows. There's a flow and a pattern. And it's kind of like what I kind of equate it like in dance, no matter how advanced you are, you go to the bar in ballet. You go to the bar, whether it's
Mm.
the most advanced ballet master or a beginning student. You go to the bar every day and you start in first position and you do your you go through your positions. And Ikebana is kind of like the ballet of floral arranging to me.
Mm.
And so for almost 2 years, at one point, I had a garden, and my partner and I had a house, and my part of contributing to our life was um, keeping the home and the garden. And so every day I would start my day making a little ikebana piece. And I had books about it too. I studied it too, not in a formal setting, but I did that. And that gave me this really great structure because if you're going to be a dancer, you it's really great to start with ballet. In fact, when I
Mm.
started in dance, my teacher wouldn't let me do modern dance or jazz dance for 2 years until I studied ballet. She made me really, really get the basics of ballet down. So it that is my structure um, behind my work. Now, what I
Yeah.
do is not ikebana. It's definitely not ikebana, but it's very interesting because when Japanese people see my work very often, they're like, "This is Japanese. How did you?" Yeah, that happened to me at very various times.
So, from my limited understanding with Ikebana,
Hmm.
isn't a big part of it to emphasize the space in
Yes,
between each of the things?
yes. This
How do you relate to space if you're not doing Ikebana? Is that something you take into consideration?
definitely. What one of the things, a basic thing that ikebana teaches you is that negative space is just as important as a space that is
Mm.
filled. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I take with. You know, I have a couple of books about ikebana, which are like if I had a Bible, these books are my Bible, and
Mm.
they do show the structure and the patterns that ikebana works through. Definitely.
So if you're not really sticking to a format, how do you choose where each part of the arrangement goes? Is it kind of an intuitive process? Do you see it in your mind's eye, or what is like guiding your creativity in the moment?
Are you speaking of just the stuff on stage or any or
Anytime you're doing any sort of arrangement.
um first of all, the, the size is limited by the size that I have to work in. But if it's like
Mhm.
if I'm outdoors on a stage at a festival or something, I've had 12-foot sunflowers in arrangements before. Um,
Yeah.
it's very much, and the vessel that the piece is created in, and balance doesn't just
Mm.
happen. It's something that must there's a lot of practice into to seeing how balance works. I will stand under trees in the winter and look at the beautiful sculpture of what a tree is. I learn most by being in the garden and watching how flowers grow naturally. And what I like to do is honor that in the arrangement that I place them.
Mm. Wow.
One of my favorite things is if I just had like if I took a shovel and just went out in the garden and plopped it into a vase.
Mm.
That
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
natural. I'll send you some things of some examples of that. You can.
That'd be wonderful.
Mhm.
Yeah. So for people who are hearing this and who are probably simultaneously looking at your work, because I
Mhm.
would really encourage people to do that,
Mhm.
people who might have some interest in this, how could they start to have their own spiritual practice with flowers? How would you advocate somebody who's never done it? How would you get them started?
One thing I just had someone reach out to me with that same question. And one of the things that I'm very happy about my book is that it is instructive as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage them to pick up my book, which is called Being with Flowers, Floral Art as Spiritual Practice. It's available on Amazon, and sometimes even the used ones go for really cheap. And I'm just so
Mm-hmm.
happy people have them. I got an email from a woman the other day that said that she was in her library and the book just fell off right in front of her, my book. And she picked it up
Wow.
and she said, my life has changed because of this book. I've been a florist for
Mm.
30 years. And one of my first teachings in the book is that I say, let's work with roses. Let's work with dahlias instead of it's changing the language of how we speak of flowers. Because when I was first starting out, I was at Wilbur's place and I would hear the designer say, oh, let's use roses. I didn't like how that felt. So
Yeah.
we changed the language because language is how we establish relationship. So I would really, this person who actually, she said, I would love to collaborate with you. And she sent me pictures of her work. And her work um, is busy, very busy, and very. So what I suggested to her is that she get my book, take a look at it, and study it, and then give me connect with me again. Um,
Mm.
and not just my book, but books about ikebana. I always recommend people to study ikebana if you're serious about a floral arranging career, or if you want a subtle and very powerful way of looking at flowers. The study of ikebana is just that, just that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So outside of the nature of studying, if somebody's just like, yes, I want to study, but I want to do it right now,
Uh-huh.
is there any like guiding principles that you could share that kind of maybe like elevate the space in which you're working, or is there anything that like you definitely shouldn't do, or how would you encourage people who tomorrow are like, I'm gonna get my hands dirty
Hmm.
and try this out?
Hmm. Well, I would encourage you to make it as spiritual and an event in your life as you can. When I fill up a vase, I look at the water and I contemplate the water, and I realize how lucky and blessed I am to just have water to put the flowers in. So
Yeah.
take it step by step as you're filling up a vase. Be conscious of the water. And then as you're gathering the flowers, I often say, thank you, Mother Earth, as I cut a flower off of its home plant. How spiritual do you want your experience to be? I want mine to be
Yeah.
deeply. So,
Yeah.
so, and one of the things that I love about my book also is that it has a meditation at the beginning of each chapter that teaches you different, very simple things to do. And one of them is a single flower meditation. And it came to me through Georgia O'Keeffe, who said, if you take a flower in your hand and hold it there and really look at it, it becomes your world for that moment. So something as simple as that, just sitting in silence with a flower in your hand, contemplating it, touching it, smelling it for 10 or 15 minutes can be a really amazing way to start your day.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a really big benefit to kind of form your own relationship to specific flowers. I feel like it's interesting. I read through your book in preparation for this, and at first when I am studying or preparing to talk with someone, I try and get like the nuts and bolts. I try and get the words of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, we got the pictures, we got all this, and but where's like the meat? And then something switched as I was reading it when I just started spending more and more time just really observing the work that you put in there, and it really struck me at a certain point. And since then, I go on my daily walks, and whenever I see a flower, it has a greater degree of significance, and I'm noticing a curiosity. Like, okay, that's an interesting flower. I've never seen that before, and then it inspires me to like look into it a little bit more. And I'm just starting to feel like I'm associating flowers with different experiences that I'm having and
Mm.
different emotional states. And so, how do you form relationships with individual flowers, and what's that kind of look like for you?
Well, sometimes people will ask me what my favorite flower is, and the real answer is whatever one I happen to be holding. That's my favorite flower.
Yeah.
I had this amazing mother. We had 8 children in our family, and recently we were asked to share a story about our mother. We had our family had a family reunion, and my mother has passed already, and so they wanted each of her children to do a little video or something about our relationship, and each of us said she had this way of making us feel like we were the special one, and
Mm.
to have 8 children and to be able to do that, and each of them would say that. My mother would look at me sometimes, and I thought maybe the sun must be rising on my face or something, 'cause what love she's looking at me with, but she made all of us feel that way, and so, with flower I'm the same way with flowers. The whatever one I happen to be holding is my favorite, and one of the things that flowers teach us is equanimity and love. If a daffodil is before the most beloved saintly person in the world, or a person that you would think would be the most deplorable, that daffodil is going to shine its beauty and brightness and joy equally at both of those people. So their flowers are just this amazing teacher for us. That impermanence that you talked about, that's one of the very deep lessons we learn. But I think
Yeah.
that equanimity and love is something that I'm called to remember so often. I had this experience once where when I was working at Omega, there was this really grumpy person that that I was like, "What is wrong with him? Jeez." And he was sitting, grob groveling down his oatmeal one day, and there was a daffodil right in his face, just, like, beaming that beauty that it would if it was just the sweetest little child. So, that's one of the things that I love about flowers.
Is there anything that you have learned from the flowers that help you navigate the uncertainty and the challenges of the modern world?
Hmm. Well.
I only bring that up just because, a big part of the show is
Mhm,
bringing these kinds of teachings to
mhm.
um, what we're facing today, in
Yeah,
the political climate, in the environmental climate, the climate climate.
yeah,
There's a lot of interlocking problems that we're facing, and
right.
I genuinely do, as I hear you speak about this and the care and concern you bring into flowers, see how this could lead to something really nourishing for
Mhm,
people who are experiencing stress. But I'm curious how you're maybe using this practice as a means to
mhm.
um, kind of regulate.
Yeah. Well, I think just being your true self, your authentic self, owning who you are and being who you are is just like the flowers you see growing out of cracks in the sidewalk and beaming their beauty and brightness there, just like they would if they were in the most expensive store or something. Just being yourself is very, very, very important. And being your true and honest, authentic self in the face of everything is very important. So that's one of the lessons I think.
I mean, that really does strike me as something that is easy to forget in this day and age when there's
Hmm.
so much incentive to maybe conform or to think in certain ways. mean, there's so many like ready-made tracks in
Mhm.
our societal discourse to kind of conform to, and we're taking on all these identities which are really rigid, and everybody's kind of ascribing to groupthink,
Mhm.
and I think learning how to have a voice in any art is so important to kind of individuate and remember what makes you unique, what makes you special, kind of like how each flower has its own quality to it.
Mhm. Truly. Well, it's that honoring of each flower too, that when you were talking about how I work with them and if how the space, if a flower has an arch and it arches a certain way, then I'm just gonna follow that. Or if I'm working with
Mm,
a fern, and it's arching a certain way, then that's the way it should fall into the vase, just
yeah.
the way it is. Honoring what is a big part of how I create.
Do you find that that has translated to how you view people as well? Because as you're saying that, I can imagine, just my relationships, and I know some people who are leaning a little bit, or
Mhm,
whatever. So, some people might be ferns, and they
mhm,
require a different kind of response. And I think a big part of what we're facing is the inability to allow people their differences,
mm,
whether or not we view their differences as being problematic or unsafe or whatever it may be. I
mhm.
think that there's just a heightened view of the other,
Well, yeah,
you
there
know?
is. There is, and recently I've had a challenge, when I have neighbors who have, signs in their windows supporting that, what did Jane Fonda call him the other day? The orange guy?
Yeah.
Jane Fonda said something like that the other day. I was anyway, in their windows, but in the morning, they'll say, "Good morning" to me, and part of me wants to say, "Screw you." Really,
Mm,
because why are you saying, you know, "Good morning" to your African American queer neighbor, and then you're supporting this maniac? Um,
yeah.
but what this very wise woman that I know told me is that, at that moment, when they're saying good morning, they're at least trying to reach some sort of civility, and it's better than them spitting at you or something.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said so she said, "So as best you can, perhaps you can say good morning or nod your head or something, but, just to accept that, which is being a person trying to be civil, um, and move on." You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think, and this is a part of what made me want to have an exchange with you. I think that the work that you're doing it feels like a direct response to a lot of the issues that we're having today, because it is this kind of wordless art form that speaks so much just by creating these really amazing pieces of art that I think it transcends any sort of ideological framework. It doesn't matter who's looking at it. There is a very fundamental recognition. This is important. There's something about this that unites people, that I think even those who might not be interested, it'd be really hard to deny. And I think that the more work that we have that does that, I just think it can really connect us and show us what we have similarly,
Mhm,
rather than constantly emphasize all the differences.
mhm. Well, to me, each flower is a masterpiece already, every flower,
Yeah.
and so my palette is masterpieces. I
Yeah.
get to work. I can take a sunflower and just put it in a vase, and there you are. You know,
Hmm.
um, so that's how I feel about the flowers. They're already. That's why I don't need to get my ego attached to because I'm humbled every time I pick up a flower, just from the jump. I already am, and yes, they do. They are some of my work. You're right. I've actually experienced people experiencing the work that the flowers and I do, and it is universal. It's like music can be universal. Um, because flowers really are, they've been with us so long and healing us and celebrating with us and honoring us. And so we can all relate to flowers. One of the things in the book that I start out with is imagine the world without flowers. It's just really
Yeah.
hard to even consider, you know,
Yeah.
imagining, what would a wedding be without flowers, or a funeral, or any sort of celebration? What would a park be without flowers?
Yeah.
Um, so they are here and around us and healing us and beaming beauty and joy and love at us so often. And whether people are, you know, uh, aware consciously or not, they are here and they are doing that. So it's really wonderful when the people that are really awake, they notice the flowers. People that are really awake notice the flowers. That's something I've noticed and watched myself. When I did work at Omega, I would do this amazing 6 foot tall crazy thing in the centerpiece of the dining hall, and people were in there to eat. So like even friends of mine would be like, there are flowers in the dining hall. They're there for the food. But
Yeah.
when the people who step back and are able to be aware, one of the first things that I noticed about the Dalai Lama when he came to the stage where I had something for him, he kind of looked back. There were some 7 foot sunflowers. He kind of looked back at them, and the producers of the event, it was this amazing event called Peacemaking: The Power of Nonviolence, where he came to hang out with inner city youth to show them practical ways of dealing with violent situations non-violently. He was there for that. But I did flowers for his hotel and for all the spaces he was in, and he kept saying, "Who did this? Who?" So they arranged, a moment for us to meet. In fact, and uh, the day that I was to meet him, there was a person filming me. So there's actually the first time he and I met. There's a little video clip of that. Maybe you can share that with people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. If
yeah,
it's public, I can
oh, it's
have that
totally
linked.
public. It's totally public.
Okay.
I'll send it to you, in fact. But
Cool.
it's that just being aware that you can make your life more beautiful if you're aware of flowers. If you openly are consciously aware of the flowers in your yard and in your life and in the park and in the grocery store, your life will automatically become a more beautiful experience.
Yeah, I read that part in your book where you mentioned the idea of like trying to imagine a world without flowers, and I've really been kind of contemplating that. I went to a funeral not long after I read that, and I thought about that. I was like, oh, like these are so ingrained in this entire room, and
Hmm.
wherever I have been, I'll have that kind of in the back of my mind, and
Hmm.
it really does leave me with a sense of gratitude and kind of like a sense of mystery as I
Hmm.
just go for a walk and just recognize it's like, oh, like they didn't have to evolve to look like this, but they did.
Hmm.
Like the fact that I'm having this immediate, very human experience of interest and connection and like it enlivens you on a very fundamental level.
Hmm. My friend Alex Gray says flowers are the momentary face of God,
Yeah,
which
that sounds like something he would say.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Thanks,
Yeah.
Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there really is any testament to there being some sort of uh, higher organization, it really does seem like the fingerprint, the fact that it's free, the fact that they are everywhere. I
mhm,
mean, we have these things that we call weeds,
right.
but really, I mean, a lot of those are pretty beautiful.
Yeah,
If
well,
you can scrub away
it's
the
a relative
linguistic,
word.
yeah.
The word weed. I mean, orchids are weeds to someone somewhere. You
Oh,
know,
that's wild.
there
Yeah.
might be someone in a spot where orchids are very prevalent. That, oh, these
Yeah.
damn orchids, and then can you imagine? But
Yeah.
it's a relative word, weeds, definitely, definitely.
Have you used what relatively we would consider as weeds? Have you used any of that in your arrangements?
No, but I've worked with them. Haha, gotcha.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, dang it. Thanks for that.
No, but yes, I have. In fact, when I was in Santa Cruz, I would go down in the, river levee, and I would gather reeds and grasses. I love working with grasses, native grasses, and sometimes I pair them with orchids as an irreverent thing, something
Yeah,
that someone would call a weed, but they look amazing with orchids, and,
yeah,
the juxtaposition is amazing. And yes,
yeah.
I have. In fact, one day I was bringing an arrangement to someone, and there was another florist in town that was not very happy that I came in and took over Santa Cruz. And and I heard her say, "Oh, there goes Anthony with his weeds," which I
Oh,
was just
no.
like, yeah, I was just like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
They they're just upset that that amount of
yeah,
creativity.
yeah,
I mean, that's what's really cool about this kind of art is that there's just so many
mhm,
opportunities. There's so many beings to work with.
definitely,
And again, for the people who want to just start, I'm sure they don't even need to go spend money. They can just go to their local park and find something that, I think it'd be really interesting to see like a series of people who are working with primarily the plants that we tend to overlook. And I'm sure that
mhm.
there's a lot of opportunities.
Oh, yeah, you can go and knock on your neighbor's door and say, "Can I cut some of these flowers from," and very often they won't even know. I did that in Santa Cruz where there was a bunch of amaranth in this yard, and I knocked on the door. It was after I had moved there a couple of weeks or so, and this very nice lady was like, "Sure, do you need some scissors? Do you need a knife or something to get them?" Which for me was so cool because it was this nice little white lady, and I had just moved there from LA. And one of the reasons I left LA is because I was so over having people be afraid of me because I'm a large black man.
Hmm.
And this sweet little lady was just like, "Oh, let me get these for you." And so it's a great way to meet your neighbor too. And in fact, I made an arrangement for her and left it on her door. The
Wow,
very funny
amazing.
thing is this lady turned out to be Nell Newman, who do you know Nell? Of course you know Nell
N-
Newman,
n-
Paul Newman's daughter.
I don't.
The
Oh, okay.
Newman's own.
Yep.
So weeks later, I was up at the campus. I started doing flowers for the chancellor, and I saw her and I said, "Oh, thank you so much. I have a shop now. Come by my shop and I'll give you some flowers." And she said, "Here, take this. I think you'll like them." And I'm driving away and I looked and it's a bag of pretzels, and it was very interesting. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, it's a way to meet neighbors. Like when someone moves into the neighborhood, bring them flowers. That's one way
Yeah.
that we can. One of the really beautiful things. I garden a lot at our community garden, and we have. It's a very open space. Everyone has their own plots and things, but we made a rule that we don't discuss politics. Once you go in,
Smart.
you go into the gate, we leave politics outside of the gate,
Hmm.
and we're there working together as a team when we're there together. But one of the beautiful things about this, what I'm experiencing with gardening now, is that I have the space to myself like 90% of the time, and it's nestled in the hills of Mendocino, and it's surrounded by redwood trees. And, that's how I start my day very often. I live in the most beautiful place right now. It's not bad to have redwood trees in your yard.
Yeah. No, that's incredible.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, there is something, I've talked to, I know a lot of guys, and I even myself as a guy, as a traditional kind of masculine identified person,
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever received flowers as a gift. That's
Yeah.
not something I feel like it's always kind of like the other way around, but I think
Uh-huh.
that it feels like that would just be such a beautiful offering to give somebody, especially,
Uh-huh.
as you're like welcome them into a neighborhood. There's something energetically about that that just I
Yeah.
feel like we have like a cultural perspective of giving flowers.
We do.
Um,
We do. And, it is changing a bit. I have a lot of friends who have boys, little boys who love flowers, like little toddlers, little boys. It's very interesting because it is it's a cultural thing because um, so often, until recently, really, I would see, you know, little girls being instructed, pretty flowers, look at the pretty flowers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think it's happening with boys more. One of my friends told me um, her grandson came over and saw my book, and every time he comes, he's like, "Let's get the flower book. Let's get the flower." So, and yeah, it's true. Like no one ever gives me flowers, which is fine because I have a lot of
Yeah.
flowers. But one of my very dear and special men in my life, the first time we went out, he brought me a bouquet of flowers, and I was like, okay, this guy knows what's up.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
men love flowers too, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a thing that it's seen as a very feminine thing to appreciate, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changing. I hope it's changing. Um,
Yeah.
and by example, like the work that I'm doing, it really has helped people. I did an event at a church in New York, and as I was working, there was an elderly African American man who was the janitor. He kept
Mm-hmm.
walking through, kind of glaring at me. No, like, what the hell is up with that? And um, when I was almost done, he came in and he said, "Little brother, you are touched by God with these flowers. When you first
Wow.
came in here, when you first came in here, I said, what is this grown man doing with a bunch of flowers?" And he said, you just opened my eyes in a way I was not expecting when I came in here to work today. He said,
Wow.
you keep it up, little brother. And I said,
That's
yes, sir.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, a lot of people don't have access to, inspired floral art. I think a lot of people are just so kind of narrow focused in life.
Mm-hmm.
It sometimes takes brushing up against somebody like yourself who is so moved by the art and the work that until you've like had that, I think we can again get kind of caught in our narratives and our presuppositions of what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and when you really see it and when you're really moved by it, you just see how bigger it is than any societal norm.
Mm-hmm. No, I do realize that because of what the importance of my calling is and the focus that I've had on it, that it reads to people. I do realize that.
Hmm.
I mean, I can hardly sleep sometimes when I know that I have a job the next day. When I'm doing a wedding or something, I cannot wait to get up. Like I'm, I have. It's a way that my innocence has been sustained because I'm like a little kid around this. It's like it's like a little kid, and it's the day before Christmas,
Yeah.
and and that excitement and love does read. Other people can see it, I believe.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think even, beyond just flowers in general, anybody who can maintain that kind of love and appreciation for something, I think it's the elixir of life. I
Mm,
think it's the fountain of youth that a lot of people are looking for.
mhm,
We will age and we will change, but
mhm,
having that kind of youthful wonderment, like
mhm,
whatever it is that somebody can do to contact that,
mhm,
so just by observing that, whether you were into flowers or oil painting or
mhm,
pottery,
mhm,
the fact that you found something that is so enlivening, that's an
mhm,
energy,
mm,
and it also just goes to show you can really have that energy over anything.
mhm.
Somebody could really like making tortilla chips
Right, right,
and
right.
still kind of manifest the same kind of energy, but the fact that what you do is so um, accessible,
Mhm,
all you have to do is watch.
mhm.
There's no barrier to entry to observe and connect with the energy that you're creating, I think is really important. And that is the lesson itself. It's just the fact that you're engaged the way you are.
And one of the greatest compliments and you gave it to me too, is that when people tell me that they notice things that they hadn't noticed before because of my work, or that they're taking a walk and they look at something, that's like, for me, that's like, wow. if I can help people in that way through this work, that's a lot. That says a lot. That feels
Well,
really wonderful.
yeah, it's expanding awareness, right?
Mm,
Like
mm,
it's literally opening up people's perspectives to see things differently, and that's the ultimate goal of like a heart-centered service, is that we're hoping to deeply affect somebody's perceptions toward love and openness and connectivity. And I think that what you're doing is that. It's what happened to me back in 2012 or 2013,
mhm.
and I saw your stuff at Rootwire.
Yeah, that is wow. I remember that. There were a couple of root wires, right? I think so.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, yeah. I don't remember what one I saw you
mhm.
at,
Was it in
but I mean that was like
Virginia or
that was in Ohio.
Ohio? Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
yep, yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was the Papadocio Festival. Then they
Mhm.
did go to West Virginia.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
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 Well, we are up near that time,
Okay.
so I do want to give you an opportunity to just share how people can connect with you. If you
Mhm.
have any, I don't know, online courses. I mean, you got this book we're talking about.
Mhm.
How can people plug into your work and continue to support you?
Well, one of the things that I'm working on, I have an amazing designer, and within, I'd say, by the end of next month, I will have a new website up, and it's
Amazing.
anthonyflowersward.com, and
Heck yeah.
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Anthony Flowers Ward, and those are the main ways that people can connect with me.
Yeah. And then your book as well.
Yes, the book is, you can find that on Amazon. Um,
Hmm.
Being with Flowers, Floral Art as Spiritual Practice. And has a
Love it.
beautiful, and the cover actually has a beautiful little uh, couple of sentences from Alice Walker
Mm,
about the book and what it's meant to her. She's been such an inspiration in my life, and a real good friend and mentor, teacher.
yeah. Amazing. Yeah, you have quite a referral list, if I've ever seen one myself.
Yeah, it's been these flowers have taken me all around the world and brought me to places that I would have never expected to go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, the rest of us are lucky to have them do that for you.
Thanks so
All
much.
right. Well, yeah. Thank you so much, Anthony. We will catch you next time.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. That was the episode. Thank you so much for listening all the way through until the end. That was Anthony Ward. If you want to start your journey into floral arrangement, I really recommend his book, Being with Flowers, Floral Art as a Spiritual Practice. You can get that wherever you get your books. And if you want to support this show, consider heading on over to patreon.com/21stcenturyvitalism and becoming a member. That is it for me, everybody. We will see you in a couple weeks. Thank you, thank you, thank you.